Good evening. I welcome you to Strange Nexus, your portal to the realms of the strange, spooky, and unexplained. On tonight's episode, I bring to you the story of Kim, a yoga teacher looking deep within herself, only to find a horrible truth.
The flickering candles cast dancing shadows on the walls of the dimly lit room, creating an ambiance of serenity. Soft, calming music played in the background, and the faint aroma of incense hung in the air. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly as I settled onto my cushion for my daily meditation. My name is Kim, and I'm a yoga teacher. Meditation has always been my sanctuary, a way to find peace amidst life's chaos. Little did I know that today, my sanctuary would transform into a hellish nightmare. I closed my eyes, allowing the sounds around me to fade into the background. I began to focus on my breath, each inhale and exhale drawing me deeper into a state of tranquility. As the minutes passed, I felt my body relaxing and my mind started to drift. But then something strange happened. I felt a sudden sensation of falling, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My stomach lurched and I opened my eyes in alarm, only to find myself no longer in the familiar meditation room. I stood in a desolate landscape, the sky above me a sickly shade of crimson. The air was thick with an oppressive heat, and the ground was cracked and charred, as if scorched by an eternal fire. My heart raced, and a knot of dread formed in my stomach as I realized that something was terribly wrong. "Hello?" I called out, my voice quivering. There was no response, only an eerie silence that seemed to reverberate through the air. I took hesitant steps forward, my bare feet crunching on the uneven ground. As I walked, the landscape seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, a barren wasteland devoid of life. Fear gnawed at me as I wandered, feeling utterly alone in this nightmarish realm. I desperately wanted to wake up from this surreal experience, to find myself back in the safety of my meditation room. Pinching myself yielded no result. This was no ordinary dream. Hours, or perhaps even days, passed in that desolate place. I lost track of time as I continued to walk, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and terror. But eventually, I saw a faint glimmer in the distance, a dim, flickering light that pierced through the crimson haze. Driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation, I quickened my pace towards the light. As I approached, I realized that it emanated from a massive, ornate doorway, standing alone in the barren landscape. The door was intricately carved with symbols and figures that seemed both ancient and otherworldly. Without thinking, I pushed open the door, and the sight that greeted me froze me in my tracks. Before me stretched a city, its towering buildings reaching towards the blood-red sky. But there was something profoundly unsettling about the cityscape. The buildings leaned at unnatural angles, and the streets seemed to twist and contort as if defying the laws of physics. I cautiously stepped into the city, my every instinct telling me to run, to escape this distorted reality. Yet, an inexplicable force seemed to pull me further into the heart of the city. The streets were eerily empty, and the only sound was the distant echo of my footsteps against the distorted pavement. As I walked, I began to hear whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. Every corner I turned, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that scratched at the edges of my sanity. I clamped my hands over my ears, trying to block out the unsettling sound, but it seemed to seep into my mind, worming its way into my thoughts. I stumbled upon a park, or what could only be described as a twisted mockery of one. The trees were gnarled and twisted, their branches contorted into grotesque shapes. The ground was littered with strange, pulsating growths that seemed to throb with a sickening rhythm. And in the center of it all stood a statue, a distorted, nightmarish figure frozen in an expression of agony. I turned away from the horrifying scene, bile rising in my throat. I wanted to wake up, to escape this twisted reality, but there was no waking up from this. The city seemed to stretch on forever, its streets leading me deeper into its heart of darkness. As I continued to wander, a figure suddenly appeared in the distance, a silhouette against the crimson sky. My heart leaped with a surge of hope, and I began to run towards it. But as I drew closer, my hope turned to horror. The figure was a person, or what was once a person. Its skin was pallid and stretched taut over its bones, its eyes sunken and devoid of life. Its limbs seemed elongated and twisted, and its fingers ended in sharp, gnarled claws. It emitted a low, guttural sound that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to turn and flee, but more figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding me with their eerie presence. They reached out towards me, their claws inches away from my skin. With a scream, I closed my eyes and wished with all my might to be anywhere but here. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the nightmarish landscape melted away. I felt a sensation of falling once again. And when I opened my eyes, I was back in the familiar meditation room, surrounded by the soft glow of candles. Tears streamed down my face as I gasped for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. It took me a moment to realize that I was safe, that I had returned from that hellish dimension. I clung to that realization, my entire body trembling with a mixture of relief and terror. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that horrifying experience haunted my every waking moment. I tried to convince myself that it had been a vivid hallucination, a product of an overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew that it had been more than that. It had been a glimpse into a reality beyond comprehension. I stopped teaching yoga, unable to find solace in the practice that had once brought me so much peace. The candles that had once been comforting now only reminded me of the flickering light that had led me into that nightmare. The incense, once a calming aroma, now carried a faint trace of the sickly stench of that twisted city. I sought help from therapists and experts, hoping to find some explanation for what had happened to me. They offered various explanations: stress, trauma, a potential dissociative episode. But none of their words could erase the memory of what I had seen and felt. Months passed, and I tried to rebuild my life. But the boundary between reality and nightmare had blurred, and I often found myself lost in thoughts of that otherworldly dimension. The whispers, the contorted city, the twisted figures, they all haunted my dreams and plied my waking hours. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep shade of crimson, I felt a strange pull, a sensation that I couldn't ignore. Despite my fear, I found myself drawn to the meditation cushion once more. With trembling hands, I closed my eyes and began to focus on my breath, just as I had done countless times before. As the minutes passed, I felt that familiar sensation of falling, but this time I was prepared. I embraced the darkness, the sensation of weightlessness, and as I opened my eyes, I found myself standing once again in the twisted city. Instead of fear, a strange calmness washed over me. I knew that I couldn't escape this place, that it was a part of me now. With newfound determination, I walked the distorted streets, no longer trying to escape, but to understand. I ventured into the park, facing the grotesque statue and the pulsating growths. As I gazed at the statue's tortured expression, a realization struck me. It was a reflection of my own pain, my own fear. The city itself was a manifestation of my inner demons, a twisted mirror of my thoughts and emotions. The figures emerged once more, their gnarled claws reaching out towards me. But this time I didn't recoil. I looked into their sunken eyes and saw not monsters, but the embodiment of my own struggles. They were a part of me, just as this nightmarish realm was a part of me. With a deep breath, I faced the figures and spoke aloud, addressing my fears, my pain, my insecurities. As I spoke, the figures began to transform, their features softening, their claws retracting. The whispers around me grew fainter until they were replaced by a gentle breeze that seemed to carry my words away. And then, just as before, the landscape melted away, and I found myself back in the meditation room. This time, however, I felt a sense of resolution, a sense of acceptance for the darkness that existed within me. I returned to teaching yoga, but with a new perspective. I understood that darkness was a part of life, just as light was. The experience had changed me, had shown me the depths of my own mind, and the capacity for both beauty and horror that resided within. As I guided my students through their practice, I shared my story, not as a tale of terror, but as a reminder that confronting our fears can lead to profound transformation. The meditation room, once a place of solace, had become a gateway to my own inner hell. But it was through that journey that I had found a deeper connection to myself and the world around me. And so I continued to guide others through their practice, helping them find balance in the midst of chaos. For I had learned that true peace was not the absence of darkness, but the ability to embrace it as a part of our journey.
This reality never ceases to amaze me. What a tale. Now click subscribe and like this video for more Strange Nexus.